Well, it looks like we're still into Winterland, and it is March. And look at all the snow. The yard is still full of snow, hasn't melted yet from all winter. So we're still into the cold and snow. It looks pretty coming down like that, but I'm sick of it. I want it to go away so we have nice warm weather and sunny weather. But that's all right. Like I said, we're still into March, so got a bit of time yet before she warms up and we can see flowers and tree buds. All right, set you up there and we'll start this show. It is Friday, and we're on page 240 of the Concordant Commentary, and this is Justification National. So, basically ending Romans chapter 9 and going into chapter 10, verse 1. God's sovereignty is further illustrated in the dispensation of justification. Normally, Israel, seeking to keep a just law, should have attained righteousness. Yet the nations who made no effort to attain righteousness grasp it, because they find it on the principle of faith. The pursuit of righteousness by means of the law led Israel to refuse the grace of Christ, apart from the keeping of the law. It is evident that this is true only in a national way, for not all of Israel stumbled. Neither did all among the nations find the righteousness of faith. This must be constantly borne in mind in studying the entire division of Romans. It deals not with individuals, but nations. Israel as a whole is apostate, yet some among them are brilliant examples of faith. The nations, who never before had any part in God's blessings, except that as they became proselytes and identified themselves with Israel, now believe God in considerable numbers. Paul becomes the apostle of the nations, and thus inaugurates the present secret economy. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 1. Intense zeal, religious fervor, coupled with self-righteousness does not lead to salvation. God demands subjection to his righteousness in Christ. The law should establish their unrighteousness and thus reveal God's righteousness, which is manifested in Christ. Israel as a nation will be saved when they see him whom they stabbed and recognize him as their righteousness. The law demanded obedience first and promised life to those only who continued to keep it. But even in the law, there was provision for faith. It taught that Jehovah himself, he was their life. Deuteronomy 30, verse 20. In the day when he gathers them out of the peoples and brings them back into the land, he will bring the word of faith very near to them. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 14. In place of their own efforts, he will put the humiliation and resurrection of Christ before them. Salvation will depend on the avowal of his lordship and resurrection. There is here an allusion to the ancient custom, still in vogue in eastern lands, of the right of sanctuary. One who is in danger of death by the hands of the blood avenger, if he cannot reach a safe place in time, may invoke the name of some great and powerful person, and thus find salvation through his name. If the avengers of blood refuse to listen to his appeal and take his life, it devolves upon the person on whose name he has called to take swift and summary vengeance. He gathers together all his friends and allies to assist him in punishing the outrage and in defending the honor of his name. For 3 1/3 days he executes vengeance on all who were concerned in killing the one who had invoked his name. Whoever should be invoking in the name of the Lord shall be saved. When vengeance visits the earth, an only shelter will be the name of Jehovah. The only shelter will be the name of Jehovah. Therefore, it will require not only heart belief, but the avowal of the mouth. Thus it is that Israel will be saved, and all others who, in that day, will seek refuge in his name. The refuge does not need to know his protector personally, yet would hardly call on one in whom he had no faith, in whom he had no faith. He could not invoke one of whom he had not even heard. Hence it will be necessary to proclaim Christ, and even before that God will need to commission his heralds. For Israel in that day, the declarations of Christ, the great protector, will be presented to them for their belief. Thus their salvation will be a simple matter of faith in his great name. The proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom, beginning in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria, spread to the limits of the land, Acts chapter 1, verse 8, and reached beyond it to the dispersion. Israel was not disobedient through lack of tidings. So they had the name of Christ presented to them. They rejected their Messiah. But the day is coming when Messiah will be coming back. In fact, Christ will be coming back with us. Israel will see Christ, and then they will proclaim his name as Messiah. All right. Conciliation National tomorrow. Or Monday. Tomorrow's Saturday. All right. Grace and peace. Have a beautiful Friday, and we will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.